Okay, so we are back with the Ultimates, and Dennis Camp reminds us all why he's so amazing, right? The betrayal here is crazy. So what this does is this initially picks up with Nick Fury and basically S.H.I.E.L.D. But one of the things to remember is that Nick Fury is not Nick Fury. So we're going to tug from a lot of what's happened in the Ultimates up to this point in time. For those of you guys who have forgotten, Nick Fury is basically an LMD, life model decoy, robot, whatever, who believes he's real. But he's a tool of the Illuminati. The, of course, Illuminati being the group that was brought together by the Maker to effectively rule in his stead, so he didn't have to oversee everything, which is even more important now because the Maker is locked up in the city, right? We have 6 months until it opens up, the Maker emerges, and who knows what's going to happen when that takes place. And so in this conversation with Nick Fury, we also learn they've captured Dupe, which is kind of crazy to see that Dupe exists in the Ultimate Universe. Dupe is exceedingly overpowered in the main Marvel Universe. I don't know if exceedingly overpowered is the right word, but he's really, really cool, right? Dimensional shifting and all kinds of crazy stuff. But the bigger point, right, focusing on Nick, is he says Tony Stark called a meeting, and the question's asked the entire network on the satellite, and the response is no. Half of us were there remotely. After what happened in heaven, they never assemble the entire network all at once. And that's where Nick Fury's like, they learned. And Nick Fury says, start from the beginning, right? What happened at this meeting? And what this person says is this is what happened. And basically it shows the battle in heaven. Now, for those of you guys who don't remember this was the fight between the Ultimates and the Incredible Hulk, that they tried to make their move against Hulk, who is one of the leading members of the Illuminati. When he showed up, we ended up learning that Hulk in this new Ultimate Universe had actually conquered the 7 capital cities of heaven, basically the cities that come together in the Tournament of the Iron Fist, the immortal weapons. So basically, Hulk is Iron Fist in this universe, and he has all these immortal weapons at his disposal, all of which have varying powers that are incredibly unique, and seemingly they killed the Ultimates. So the question is, how do they die? Because immediately you switch over and you have Tony Stark talking to Dr. Doom and the quote-unquote assembling of the Ultimates. Again, because this fight broke out, because all the Ultimates were assembled, that's why they don't come together anymore. And so you have She-Hulk talking to Janet, and it's like our nightmare, right? We're all experiencing the same thing. And Hank chimes in, basically saying like, yes, I've had this nightmare as well. And initially, Tony Stark kind of chalked it up to being a nightmare, and with him emerging out of everything that happened, we'll talk about that here in a second, he says, it's not just a nightmare. Tell them, Doom. Tell them, or I will. And Doom doesn't. He doesn't say anything, right? And Janet's like, what in the world is going on? And one of the things to know about Tony Stark is that after the Battle of Heaven, when the Incredible Hulk basically broke every bone in his body, he's essentially been in a state of recovery ever since. He's been in stasis. So he's just now emerging from all of that. And he says, since I fused the Immortus engine with my nervous system, freezing myself forever in the decisecond before death, I've been catching up on what I missed. The engine allows me to see through time. And he says, sometimes, at least that's the case, I'm still kind of figuring it out. And he says, when I looked back on that day, I saw 2 versions of events superimposed, like 2 competing signals, one growing stronger as the other faded out. One in which Doom got us out just in time, and the other one where he didn't, and they were all killed. And this kind of blows everybody's mind. Now, this is kind of a huge revelation here, because one of the things to remember is that the Immortus engine was basically built by the Maker and Dr. Doom. Now, of course, there is the whole origin of how Dr. Doom in this universe is basically Reed Richards, that the Maker had sabotaged the original trip of the Fantastic Four, and then essentially put Reed in a room where time passed slowly, and then just started torturing and tormenting him, converting him into Doom by convincing him that everything he touches literally dies, right? Doom goes everywhere he goes. So it's a really tragic story. As always, we have the playlist if you want to check it out. But the Immortus engine is basically what allows for time travel. And so this is one of the cool components here, and it's one of the things that's handled incredibly well, because with this kind of revelation from Tony Stark, Doom says it was all very messy. By the time I found you, what I found was unacceptable. So I intervened. That was what happened, but it didn't have to be. And it isn't what happened anymore. I saved your lives. You are welcome. Basically, Dr. Doom used time travel, right? Literally, the Ultimates were killed in the fight with the Incredible Hulk. They all died. right? Dr. Doom used time travel to go back and change the past, but the rule that was agreed on here is that they would never do that. And that's what makes this so crazy, is because in effect, all these members of the Ultimates are remembering their own deaths, but those memories are competing with the new memories in their head. Now, it's really cool the way that Marvel's handling this, because time travel in Marvel Comics has been handled in a variety of different ways, and it's oftentimes very confusing. The best way in which time travel was handled in Marvel was actually by Jonathan Hickman in the Fantastic Four, when he treated it almost like a tidal wave, right? That an asteroid plunging into Earth, not enough to destroy it, but to create a giant tsunami, is like the act of somebody going back in time and changing a thing. The tidal wave, as it spreads across, is the effect of that change passing over everything, right? So imagine a giant tidal wave passes over the United States, and as it moves over the states, what was once a very green, lush place becomes like a desert or something like that. That desert representing whatever that change happened to be in the new timeline. But it creates all kinds of issues, right? Because there's so much inconsistency in it. What's being done here is because the Ultimates are living effectively two lives at the same time, it shows that just because you go back in time and change a thing doesn't mean that everything is suddenly different now, that those affected can remember things. But here's the problem, and this shows the major issue and why the deal was made. Because what Tony Stark says is, he says, you've been lying to us, Doom. You've been lying to us all, and you broke our agreement. Now, Doom responds, and he says, I saved your lives. I saved the Ultimates. Our agreement, you should be kissing my feet. Everything I have done for the cause. And the response of Tony is, well, what about Project 4? Now, we'll talk about that here in a second, but one of the things that was really established here with the Ultimates was that when the Makers showed up in this universe and started using time travel to screw up everybody's histories, preventing Peter Parker from being bitten by a radioactive spider, stopping the formation of the Avengers, Captain America was never discovered. The reality here is that they, and even we, do not know the full totality of every change the Maker made. So there's no absolute guaranteed way to know that if you go back in time and start changing things that you're quote unquote setting it back to rights. You could be making a bad situation worse. And so because of that, messing with time travel is a big no-no, because who knows what could happen as a result of that. And so despite the fact that Dr. Doom did it to save the lives of the Ultimates, he took a massive risk here, because by doing that, he could have very well set the entire Earth and even the universe itself on a collision course for guaranteed destruction. And so the death of the Ultimates could have actually been the thing that needed to happen. And because it didn't, now everything could be worse. Now, as far as Project 4 goes, that ties into the origin of Dr. Doom in the Ultimate Universe. And to go a little more in-depth into this, outside of the description we gave a few minutes ago, that yes, one of the things the Maker did is that when Reed Richards went through and did all the calculations for the trip and all that kind of stuff, the Maker came behind him secretly and changed the calculations. And Reed never really gave it a second thought. And so he thought all his calculations were correct. They go on the mission, a fire breaks out, it kills Johnny Storm. Ben Grimm is killed, Susan Storm died. I mean, everybody dies in varying ways. Reed is the only one left. Because of the catastrophe of the flight, this leads to Reed basically being tossed into prison. I mean, it's like the worst case scenario for what could have happened with the team and their inaugural launch within a reasonable story from Marvel, not taking into account Ruins or even House of M to a degree or something like that. And so when the Maker showed up to Reed, he literally started melting his face, and because his face is elastic, it doesn't actually get destroyed. Instead, it just deforms, so that gives you Dr. Doom's deformed face. And then again, psychological and physical torment, convincing him he's the reason why the Fantastic Four died. It's one of the most tragic stories that I've ever seen for any character in Marvel, and it's beautiful the way that it was done. But in reality here, what Reed or Doom, whatever you want to call him, has always been trying to do is figure out a way to bring the Fantastic Four back. But more so than that, it's one thing to create the scenario that would give them their powers, right? And to say, okay, so now that I've perfected that, then now we know how Susan and Johnny and Ben would have gained their abilities. It's another to set circumstances up so they could actually regain their powers. And that's what Tony Stark is learning about here, right? He says, all this time, supposedly working out the correct dose of cosmic energy, it was all a lie. All that time, you've been trying to break through the Maker's barrier, to radically change the past, all behind our backs. right? He was trying to figure out a way to go back and prevent the other members of the Fantastic Four from dying. His wife, his brother-in-law, his best friend. And Doom says, if you want an explanation, I will give it happily. But if you seek contrition, I am afraid the capacity was long ago cut out of me. I am Doom. You must accept this and all it means, as I have. And the response of America Chavez is like, you're irresponsible, right? You could have destroyed everything. You know what happened to the Guardians. You could have erased this world. And the response of Doom is phenomenal here because it says, and what in this world is so worth saving? Tell me. Someone tell me, right? Fix the world. Those were your words. This is the supposed purpose of the Ultimates. Well, I am trying. Can you say the same? Can any of you here say the same? But the question is even asked here of Dr. Doom. Like, I admire what it is that you're doing, but did you even have a plan for when you broke through the barrier? Did you even know what you would do? Or were you so just hell-bent on whether or not you could, you never stopped to ask the question of whether or not you should, right? Like, what was the grand plan? What was the goal? And so the questions asked by Tony Stark, is that why you took us out after I and we were essentially killed, where we were supposed to die? Were you trying to cover your tracks so we would never know that you meddled with time? And the response of Doom, right? Is that really what you think of me? Right now, again, Tony Stark has a great response to this. He says, I don't know what to think. It seems a little bit convenient. I'm the only other one who could have understood what you've been doing. So why else? Why would you let that happen to me? Why would you let my body be broken? And why would you let me be hooked up to this Immortus machine, incapacitated, so that no one else here, having no idea what it was that you were doing, would even know to ask questions, would even know what to look for and to realize something was off. That's the importance of this. All this is coming to a head because now Tony Stark's awake. Tony Stark's looking around and he immediately realized something's not right here. Something's off. Let's get to the bottom of it. The response of Doom, and this is probably one of the greatest speeches that Doom's ever given. He says, I tried, Tony. It wasn't just separate space-times. I had to save you without uncreating myself, or this version of myself. The further away your deaths were from me, the more difficult that became. The more enmeshed your deaths became with my life. With every passing second, the calculations became 10 to the 23rd power more complex. So I tried. I tried to get you out before from the beginning. I tried to save you, but even with a time machine, I ran out of time because everything I touch is all doomed. I miscalculated yet again. It will not work without you. None of it works without any of us. All of us. And so he starts to kind of get riled up here, right? And he says, I had to save you, even if it meant risking myself. And where Tony approaches him and says, hey man, it's okay. The response of Doom, it's not okay. Nothing is okay. Now, knowing the history and the origin of Doom, this is incredibly tragic because what this means is that he failed to keep his family alive. This is his new family. It's his new purpose in this new life that he lives, however diminished it may be from his previous life. And at the end of the day, he still feels like he failed. And he says, don't you see, it's not working. We have not made enough progress, not even close. We're running out of time. We have credible intelligence from the far future that we've already lost. And he even says, like, America Chavez, you can vouch for this. And America says yes, right? Because that's one of the things to remember. The Guardians of the Galaxy in the Ultimate Universe came from the future to the present day and basically told everybody, you are going to lose, right? The world is going to lose and it's going to die. And seemingly there's nothing you can do about it, right? You're fighting and kicking against oblivion. There's nothing you can do to stop it. And she says, I've seen it myself and I'm sure that it was real. Don't ask me how, it's just, I know that it was. And Doom says the engine lets you see into the past, but what about the future? Can you confirm this, Tony Stark? He says, I've been trying. Everything after the city opens up is just white. And so Doom says, you're right. If I can break the Maker's barrier, I will save my family, fix at least one piece of this world. Isn't that what we all came here to do? I will make a better world in this one's place, even if there is no place in it for me, a world without Doom? And the response is, you haven't thought about this, right? You haven't thought this through. This is basic complexity science. Your actions will have unpredictable, unintended consequences. They could lead to something worse. And the response of Doom, as true of any action that we might take, and yet still, we must act, even with incomplete knowledge and knowledge of our incompleteness. You talk of revolution, but when the decisive moment comes, even knowing we will fail, knowing for an absolute certainty, you refuse to take the necessary steps. What are you waiting for? This world is a prison. What do you have to lose but your chains? That is why I lied and obfuscated. I knew that you would not approve, but I knew also that I was right. Radical action and imagination are what are called for now. I assure you, I have thought this through. And it's an incredible argument to make here, right? Because what Dr. Doom is basically doing is calling everybody out, right? If you sit around waiting for all the answers to all your possible questions before you decide to make a decision, then the possibility to make a decision will have simply just passed you by. So sometimes you just have to go out and do a thing without even knowing what the end result of that thing is going to be. People call it faith, some call it taking a chance, but the reality is that's what it requires. That's what this situation requires. There's no conceivable way for anyone to know what happens when the dome of the Maker opens. There's no conceivable way for anybody to know what would happen if they went back in time and saved Johnny, Ben, and Susan. They don't know what the answers to those things would be. What if they stop the Maker and allow the radioactive spider to bite Spider-Man and he becomes a villain, right? The reality here is that for every action that they commit to, there are an infinite number of possibilities that start multiplying by base 10 numbers every time they do that thing, yet still they do it, having no idea if their actions will lead them into a future that will be beneficial to them or terrible for them. So honestly, Doom seemed like he made the right call. He believed it in his heart of hearts. And so in response to all of this, Tony Stark simply says, okay. And the response of Doom is like, what are you talking about? And Tony says, I believe in you and I trust you. And that's what Doom needs. As much as he might shy away from this, right? As much as he might say, well, this is just so strange and foreign to me, for the first time in his life, since he became Dr. Doom, someone's telling him, I believe in you. I believe that you will do the right thing. I trust you to make the right call. Not everything you touch turns to doom, dust, and death. It is incredible because Tony says, I didn't call everybody here to put you on trial. I just thought we needed to get everything out into the open so we could decide on the future of this thing together. And so Janet Van Dyne asked Steve Rogers, right? She's like, what do you think about all of this, Captain America? And he says, Doom's right. And even Tony Stark and Dr. Doom are like, really? Like, everybody's kind of flabbergasted, right? Even I'm kind of flabbergasted to hear, Captain America say that Doom's right in any universe. And Captain America says, I agree with you, right? This is not going to work. He says, but I don't think trying to break through the barrier is really any better of an idea. If you have not cracked it by now, there's no guarantee that you're going to crack it in the next 6 months. And 6 months is what we have before that dome opens up. And that's before getting into the ethics of potentially killing trillions by making changes to the time stream and whatever calamity might come out of that. And even says, Tony, origin boxes are also a failed concept. I stand by that. Now, that's an important thing here because one of the things to know is that following the defeat of the Maker and the death of Howard Stark and all that kind of stuff, and Tony Stark and Dr. Doom literally fleeing the Illuminati at the very end of Jonathan Hickman's kind of reworking of the Ultimate Universe in the original story, and then just like running into the time stream, Tony Stark had the idea. He sat down and he said, okay, so if the Maker adjusted things so that Peter Parker never becomes Spider-Man, then I will design a suit for him that will let him be Spider-Man. That was the nature of origin boxes, right? Kind of artificially giving people the powers they were supposed to have. But again, one of the things that Captain America had hit on is that Spider-Man isn't just Spider-Man because of the costume that he wears and the powers he has. Spider-Man is Spider-Man because of his experiences. It was kind of a meta commentary, right, on Spider-Man as a character within comic books. The death of Uncle Ben, the death of Gwen Stacy, Mary Jane Watson staying by his side ride through it all. The significance of Aunt May being almost the moral backbone of his entire life, in addition to the life lessons that Uncle Ben taught him. Those are the things that make Peter Parker Spider-Man. So you can't simply just thrust those powers onto a guy and expect him to become the superhero that he was presumably supposed to be. And so that's why Captain America continues on and he says, but what we're doing now isn't working either. We don't need ominous visions of the future or potential past to see what's in front of our faces. We are no match for what's already here, much less what's coming when the city opens. The Ultimates have been scattered, fractured, and disoriented, and I blame myself for that. I've been thinking small, like a soldier, instead of what we need. Now, he almost says Avenger, I imagine, right? Instead of saying like as an Avenger. And so he says, the truth is, America Chavez and Mr. Cage have been much more effective than I have. We could all learn a lot from them. And he says, we need a more active outreach. We need to expand the network rapidly. We need to give them something to fight for. In fact, we need to give them something to die for if need be. What Steve Rogers is talking about here, and those of you guys who read Avengers and New Avengers from Jonathan Hickman, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He's talking about building the Ultimate Universe's version of Avengers world, right? A world full of Avengers. Avengers all over the place. The Avengers in Asia and so on and so forth, right? A global unified front against whatever threats may exist out there. And so that's where Dr. Doom says, and we must use the Immortus engine to its full potential. It is our greatest weapon. And Tony even responds. He says, we'll have to think in 4 dimensions if we want to save the world. And Dr. Doom says, 4 at least. And so the response of Tony, right? Well, the truth is, I've already started thinking about the possibilities. And America Chavez kind of starts bringing everybody back down, right? She says, you're already making the same mistakes. It cannot just be you or Doom or Steve making decisions all the time. For this to work, we'll need everyone's ideas. We have to try everything to save everything. And so that's why Doom says, America is right. We cannot trust ourselves. I mean, we can't simply just trust the future to the 3 of us. And so the agreement, from now on and from here on out, we pull perspectives and ideas, find ways to combine expertise and enhance our approaches. That nothing is forbidden, everything is possible. And so Tony says from the top down, didn't work. So let's try bottom up. And it's unanimous. The Ultimates 2.0 is hereby dissolved. Let's make sure the next one is better. So the team is kind of reforming its charter. What it also looks like they're doing is they're going to expand their roster. Because as much as Steve Rogers would say that the idea of origin boxes were a disastrous idea, Spider-Man would seem to fly in the face of that, because Peter Parker did get his powers by way of Tony Stark, and he's become every bit the hero that you would expect him to be. The problem is he's got his own issues. He's got problems of his own that he needs to deal with that have nothing to do with the Ultimates, right? And so following that, you pick back up with Nick Fury and the revelation of who he's talking to. And so this person says, listen, Fury, you made assurances. And the response of Fury, then rest assured, I'm a man of my world. When the time comes, and the time will come, you and your husband will be spared, Mrs. Van Dyne. Janet is the spy. She's spying on the Ultimates for the Illuminati, right? Which kind of really explains why they were always a step ahead. The Ultimates don't know this, and so they think they're behind when the reality is they're not. Take Janet Van Dyne out of the picture, and they maintain the upper hand almost 100% of the time. And so he says, so long as you tell us everything, you have my personal guarantee. And he says, now you better get back before Hank misses you. We put groceries in your car for an alibi. And he says, but thank you for participating in Han's informant program. We will be in touch. So seemingly she's been doing this ever since she came onto the team, which has been quite some time. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. I love what's happening in the Ultimates right now, man, right? Dennis Camp, Jonathan Hickman, and Stephanie Phillips, just like the top 3 writers in Marvel right now. It's incredible, as far as I'm concerned, right? It's incredible. So thank you all for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.